We are joined by UFC welterweight Alex Morono, who is coming off a war of a win against Reese McKee and is set up for the biggest fight of his life on December 19th against former UFC lightweight champion of the world, Anthony Pettis. Alex, how are you doing tonight?
Dude, feeling good. I got, like 5 more days of this fight camp left before I head up to Vegas. Peaking at the right times, coming off that last Reese McKee fight. It was a full fight camp. I had a couple weeks to kind of enjoy time with the family, enjoy some Thanksgiving food, and to heal up some bruised hands. And I'm good to go, man. This has been a fun, short, furious fight camp.
Yeah, and I heard in your post fight that you said you wanted to take some time off. I'm sure it was a lot harder to take a little more time off when you got an offer like Anthony Pettis on December 19th.
You know what? When I signed with the UFC, I made sure to not take long breaks. Like I would take maybe a week or 2 weeks off after a fight to kind of allow my body and the stress of the fight camp to kind of subside. And what was funny is Monday of last week, it was 2 weeks after my Reese fight. I had got back on my clean eating and got back on my active 2 days training. And then Tuesday they offered the fight, so I was like, you know what? I'm actually kind of already right back in the swing of things. And the reason I started doing that is in case they offered a big opportunity short notice. And it's funny how it just worked out. And, this is a strategy that I've been doing for 5 years. I've been in the UFC for 5 years now come January. And this is the first time it really paid off. And I couldn't be happier.
It's great to hear, and you love seeing people like yourself get that big fight with someone like Anthony Pettis. I think your styles clash very well, and we're looking forward to seeing.
100%. So, yeah, we want to kind of work front to back in terms of your career, because we want to talk about more than just this Pettis fight. But I do want to lead off with that. Anthony's known for having that style he does. We've seen the highlight reel stuff. We've seen the bendo kick. We've seen all the ton of fun stuff he can do. How do you prep for that? Is there someone in your gym that can give you a good facsimile of Pettis? How does prepping for Pettis work?
Yeah, you know what? I think everyone's happy to do it. Martial arts in the modern day, everyone is so well-rounded. And, I was even kickboxing with a friend who's a wrestler, but he was throwing cartwheel kicks and stuff. When Carlos Diego Fierro fought Pettis, I watched tape on Pettis and I got to emulate him. So now people are happy to kind of have some fun and throw those shots. And I've always tried to be a more cerebral fighter. I try to use, whatever edge I have in the intelligence department to make sure to make good decisions in these fights. And I'm not one of the guys who's gonna give Pettis his style to shine. So whether I'm out of range or in range, I'm just gonna make sure to be very conscious of getting hit with anything flashy and stupid.
It's good advice.
And it's funny that you mentioned that you simulated Pettis, because I believe I saw that interview, and I think it was a year or two ago it was posted. But when I saw that you said you emulated Pettis, it instantly made me a lot more excited for the fight. What do you see in Pettis' game that you think can be taken advantage of? What do you think you personally can exploit when you guys are opposite of each other on December 19th?
You know what? He's a veteran, and he's fought every style. One thing that I learned, so I had a fight in Japan against Keita Nakamura, and he was a really good grappler. And I worked a lot of anti-grappling. And in the fight, I was so fixated on him potentially out-grappling me that I didn't implement my strengths. And the dude never out-grappled me. After the fight, I was like, dude, I could have maybe out-grappled that guy. So ever since that fight, I don't, I study and can prepare for what guys may do, but I don't assume they're going to do anything, because the last thing I want to do is wait for something that may never happen. So I really try to implement my game plan and really implement my strengths in these fights. And you watch tape on me, the fights don't change. I'm going to look to have some well-ranged, high-volume striking at the right times. And it's just a matter about, not getting caught in those crossroads of getting hit with something flashy, something crazy. And this is definitely a fight I'm not looking to censor. I wouldn't be surprised if he initiates the clinch and maybe even looks to shoot in for a takedown. This is a fight that I just see going everywhere, and I'm not really assuming anything. And I'm really excited on the versatility of this fight, because I know he's got a good clinch. I know he's got a good ground game, as do I. And we both kind of prefer to strike. But, you get two wrestlers that usually look at Colby and Woodley. I'm sorry, Colby and Usman. Their wrestling neutralized each other. And it was a striking contest. Maybe Pettis and I's striking styles conflict in such a way that it brings different aspects and dynamics to the fight. So I'm really going in there with an open mind. And again, just good decision making is my primary goal in this fight.
As long as we don't see the 170 version of Lewis Ngannou, I think we're fine, and I don't see a possibility of that happening. Is there any extra motivation or fire behind you in the gym, given that Anthony Pettis is a bit of a draw and he's a former world champion? How does it feel in training camp right now? I know it's a shorter camp, but there's got to be a little added intensity. This is a huge fight.
Hell yeah, always, man. I have a few pretty decent level pros under me. I got one guy, Ricky T. He's 10-2. I got my main trainer partner, Jake Heffern, and he's 7-2. I got another guy who's 8-3. And I tell them, because they're like all right on the cusp of getting into the UFC. I'm like, guys, there is no motivation like UFC motivation. And like my debut, I had 12 days notice. And when I got that call, I was more fired up and prepared more for that fight than any fight I'd ever done in the past. And yeah, there's UFC motivation, but then there's high level UFC motivation. And I've always been a very motivated fighter. I think what helped compensate for whatever I lacked compared to other guys was over preparation in fight camps. Boxing, kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, and MMA especially. I've maybe had 40 or 50 fight camps in my life, and I have over prepared for 40 or 50 fights. I've never once come in unprepared.
Yeah, and you see it when you fight. You always look prepared, and I want to make a comparison, man. I see a lot of James Krause in you. I see a lot of comparisons between you and James Krause, and I hope to see you take the same course as a coach as he is doing, because the camp he's got going there, they're starting to put out some killers, and they weren't too known as a camp to begin with, but I want to move forward, and you mentioned being a company man and striving to get your 4th contract with the UFC. I was wondering, is that deal done, or are you going into this fight as, oh, it is done, beautiful?
It's done.
And we had a number in mind, and the UFC offered a higher number. I mean, like I can't tell you guys how much I love working with the UFC. It's provided me so many opportunities as a coach now and a fighter and a martial artist. I don't want to, talk is cheap, actions really shine. And I want to show them my gratitude by just putting on a freaking war on the 19th, coming out with my hand raised and just giving the UFC another high profile fighter who gets some viewers to watch.
Well, seeing how many fights you have in the UFC and seeing the style of fight that you bring it every time. I've never seen you fight and not have it be a little bit exciting. You've really got to earn these shots in the UFC, and I think the UFC is starting to notice that you have earned them, and giving you this big step up is insane. I wanted to ask, if I can, what is the length of that fight contract? How many fights do you got? What's the new deal looking like? Is there anything you can share about it, or is that a little on the low key for now?
I mean, no, I'm sure. I've had a very standard run. I've had 4 fight deals, and this is my 4th 4-fight deal. And generally, it's smart business to re-sign before you fight out your contract. Absolutely. And I'm happy to do that. So, contract number 4. Getting to the UFC is hard. Staying in the UFC is much harder. And my boy Miles Johns, I know he's working towards his 2nd contract, and I congratulate him. And I was like, hey man, that's the real hidden secret to being in the UFC. You got to think maybe 50% of the fighters that get signed don't make it past contract 1. And then, of the guys who make it to contract 2, 50% of those guys don't make it. And I think that number keeps halving every time you get a new contract. And again, I'm just happy to be being here for kind of the long haul, and I'd really like to be a mainstay fighter. I was just watching a video on YouTube today with my wife, and it was guys with the most wins in the UFC, and Jim Miller was up there with like high 20s wins. Damian Maia's up there. I'd really like to be in that group one day with these guys. Like 20 fights was my goal. I'm actually coming up on 20 fights, sooner than later. I'm going to make my new goal 30 fights after that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I heard you say you're going to make it 20 to 30 and then 30 until you retire as a beaten up old man in the octagon. I loved hearing that, and I love the attitude, man. And especially today, seeing that Anthony Rumble Johnson has left the UFC, signed with Bellator. It's got to be nice for Dana, Sean Shelby, Joe Silva, and all the guys over there to have a real company man talking so nice about the company. A lot of people complain about the pay, but realistically speaking, Dana said it best. It is an opportunity. And being in the UFC allows so many things, like you said yourself, for coaching. It opens up doors that would never have been opened before. And it's just nice seeing someone take your approach as opposed to what's going on mainly. And I'm not saying some of those complaints aren't warranted, but it'd be nice if more people focused on taking advantage of the opportunity as is in the moment.
I mean, sure. And, and the pay scale is relative. In my experience and perspective, there's two very important factors to look at. One, the fighters could get paid a bigger portion of the profits, sure. But it's relative, man. You go out of the UFC and go back on the local fight scene. I'm making like $2,000 a show and $2,000 to win. And honestly, that's pretty good local pay. And then your UFC debut, you're looking at 12 and 12. It's just the percentage is much higher. And yes, I do believe the athletes should be getting paid as much as they can. But until we catch a promotion that's shelling at that money and making money themselves, it's just, I'm happy with how much I'm getting paid. With COVID hitting this year and my gym taking a big hit and me losing that fight in February, I didn't expect to make much money at all this year. And then after getting that win against Rees and even the fight with Pettis, and I'm banking on I'm going to win this fight. That's my goal. I'm going to have a pretty comfortable year financially. So, until people see better offers, until a company, I've always been the kind of guy, I don't like when people complain if they don't have a solution. And I've not seen a promotion with a better solution.
It's a really realistic approach, and I think that you see it and it seems like it's mostly fans on message boards and whatnot who kind of, I don't want to say they blindly say the fighters deserve more, because the fighters do deserve more, but it's nice to see a realistic approach from a fighter that says, hey, it could be better, but this is the best we got right now. I want to transition.
Go ahead. In
high
school, I would do this all the time with my friends. It's like, hey, for $10,000, would you do this? Or for $100,000, would you do this?
Yeah.
And if I was like, hey guys, for $100,000, would you go fight this dude? You guys would be like, hell yeah, I would do it. And I actually get that. These are not hypothetical situations. Getting these 6-figure paydays is realistic now. And I couldn't be happier. And MMA
awesome.
is such a, and this isn't right, but I would fight not in the back in the day I would fight for free because I enjoyed it. So it's cool. It's cool to get compensated at this level, and until you guys can show me a higher level of compensation, I'm going to be very happy at the highest level right now.
I certainly can't show you something higher right now, so keep on pushing. I want to rewind a little bit. John mentioned some possibilities for you perhaps later in your career to get into coaching. You own Gracie Barra in the Woodlands. I want to talk to you about that. You've been open about the difficulties that your gym has had during COVID. I want you to touch on that, but before that, what was the process of acquiring that, of getting a gym under the Gracie Barra banner? What's the process like of I don't want to say franchising, but it almost seems like franchising, right? How's that go?
Sure. I waited them out. No, not really. So I started training at the gym as like a 16 or 17-year-old, and I was one of those gym rats who just lives there. I was there every day. Right after school, I'd show up and I wouldn't leave until they closed. Once I graduated, I was there twice a day, every day. So, was a student, was then a competitor, and then I was a coach. And for a few years I coached. And then our head owner at the time was moving, and then some ownership opportunity came in, but I more so became like a coach there. And then the ownership had changed again, and I had an opportunity to overtake the gym. And I met my wife there, and now we run that gym together. And I actually we budget our finances off of our living wage at the gym, so all of the fight money is bonus. Some guys require paying their bills and feeding their family with that win bonus. And I believe that adds an unnecessary amount of stress. And I don't have that stress, so I get to do this for fun. And I do it just for the thrill of the battle and to quench the bloodthirst. I think that's a much more pure motive to get in there.
When you do it for the love of the game, it's just different.
It is different. And I really appreciate that aspect. And it's nice. It allows for a more comfortable lifestyle. And I never wanted to prove that I was the best fighter in the world. I think that's kind of stupid and very relative to the time you're fighting. I'm doing this because I enjoy it. And I'm doing it so I can build myself the best resume as a coach, so my students and my family and my team, know they're getting the best quality instruction and the most legit martial artist to show them the ways.
Well, that's a valuable approach too. I mean, you're in the gym training to fight in your underwear against killers. Anthony Pettis is you got guys to worry about. You can't be sitting there thinking about this bill, that thing. You got kids to teach. You've got fights to prepare for. So I think it's a very smart, it's a very heady approach to do that and to look at the gym money as this is what I have and the rest is bonus. It's incredible. Talk about COVID in your gym. I know you've mentioned it a little bit before in the public eye, but what's been the process like the last going on a year now? You've had some ups and downs, it seems like, with the gym during this time. What's the word now? How are you doing?
Yeah, I have two pretty important thoughts on that before getting into the businesses. Like, one, I don't know what the solution is, and I don't know why we haven't been presented a solution. Like, what's the end game? Like, what is the solution? Does everyone need to get it? Are people going to hide until there's a vaccine? And then, I am young and very healthy, and most everyone at my gym is young and very healthy. We are not high-risk people whatsoever. Yeah. I feel like when this went down, people who were high risk should certainly take extra measures and precautions to make sure they don't have any interaction. And then they should allow the economy to thrive and survive by letting the young, healthy people, and not even young, but like the healthy people, go about their day and keep things pumping. And I have not got COVID. And when I'm in fight camp, I am like COVID paranoia because I got to pass my tests.
Yeah.
But I've had maybe, 30 or 40 acquaintances who've gotten it. And of the 30 and 40, 100% of them have said it's been extremely mild. They had symptoms for maybe 1 or 2 days. At worst, there was a fever for a couple days.
I had it.
What I've
I
seen
actually had it, and I can say the same.
I know people have died and stuff, but not in what I've seen. So I don't like almost losing my life's work because of something I'm not afraid of.
Well, you're a business owner. You're a small business owner. You are the person impacted from a non-health perspective. Of course, you are a part of the group of people impacted the most. So what you're saying, we get it. It makes total sense. That's why we were, John and I saw what you had said about the gym, and we're genuinely concerned as fight fans and as fans of yours and as fans of the Gracie Baja banner. We really wanted to make sure that things were okay with you, and that's why we wanted to talk about it here. Just to see, we know that it had been rough, for you a little bit. So we're really pulling for you. We're really hoping that that's improving and gotten better.
Yeah. Business is back. We're probably operating at like maybe 60, 70%, which is enough to pay the bills. And man, I'm cool with that. Like, I didn't expect to make a lot of money this year. What I didn't want to do is go in the hole and lose my business or start taking money out of my own bank account. And we didn't have to do much of that. So so long as we can stay afloat, I'm cool with that. Plus, I don't know, do you guys know who Draculito is?
Draculito, yes, sir.
He's a legendary jiu-jitsu guy, and he's like our Gracie Baja, commander. And he had stayed in pretty close contact with a lot of black belt instructors and had given us strong guidelines to make sure we are, able to keep our businesses going, but following safe guidelines. And my county is a bit further north of theirs, and we actually had a few less restrictions. But we did the whole 9 yards. Started with Zoom classes as soon as businesses could open up. We did no contact training. We took everyone's temperatures. Of course, if anyone was ever feeling anything other than 100%, they were staying out. And then once contact was allowed, we would do one partner for the whole hour. I was very selective with my training partners, and we have managed to maintain and contain almost 100%. And it's been awesome, and we've had no issues whatsoever.
That's great news. That's perfect. That's what we want to hear. I want to rewind a little bit in your career. I want to take it back to what's the date on this? March 14th of 2014. It's your first of 2 fights with Rashid Abdullah. This is the main event in the first Texas City Throwdown. You won in kind of an odd way. Go through that.
Yeah, I got 2 wacky stories about this man. Yeah, so I'm fighting Rashid, and like back. I mean, I still kind of do it in the UFC now, but I used to get intense before my fights, and I'd like stare fire. I wouldn't say anything, but I would stare fire. I would always walk out to like, I don't know if you guys know the band Amon Amarth, but it's like high-paced, mean, melodic death metal, and like before I fight, I'd be like staring and pacing, and it would make guys want to meet the intensity. So that fight started fast and furious. And man, in the first round of that fight, I had him in an armbar, and he was like screaming. And even in the rules meeting before that, the ref was like, if you guys scream in a submission, that's a verbal tap. And more than anything, in hindsight, I wish the ref would have stopped it then. So anyway, in the first round, he shoots a double leg, and we go through the ropes. This isn't a boxing ring. It's a hybrid card, half boxing, half MMA.
Wow.
The ring was old and gross. I'm surprised I didn't get staph on that ring. But we fly through the ring. It's elevated 6 feet, land on the commissioner's table. Papers go flying. Thankfully, he and I don't suffer any weird freak injuries. You know, I watched Lindsay Hatecraft knock out a girl in a kickboxing match in Florida one year at a tournament. That girl fell awkwardly out of the ring and she died. So I've seen crazy stuff like that before.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we get back in the ring. First round ends. I'm like, dang, I almost had him. Second round goes, and he shoots a double. I go for a guillotine, and we end up in half guard. And I sweep him from half guard, and he like dips his head under the ropes. And I'm like, shit. So the ref is like, hey, you guys got to reset back in the middle, and Morono's going to be on top. And Rashid takes out his mouth guard and starts arguing with the ref. And I'm like, yo, dude, let's reset. So we reset. I'm on top. I go in for another guillotine. He ends up reversing me, so he's in my closed guard. His mouthpiece still in his hand, and he bites me on the chest. Weirdest thing. And, like, I knew it was illegal, but at the time I didn't think, like, it's illegal. I just thought it was weird. And I said, I was like, did you just effing bite me in his corner? And we were in his corner. And they were like, no, Rashid, stop it. So the fight ends. I scramble back up. I think I am, like, in another submission. And as the ref calls, you know, the round is over, I stand up and he looks at me and he sees like a picture perfect, like you know, comedic bite mark on my chest.
Wow.
And he's like, did he bite you? And I was like, Jesus, yeah, he bit me. And the ref is like puzzled. And I see him go to the Texas commissioner. And he's like, hey, this guy just bit him. What do I do? And the commissioner like looks and he goes, disqualify him now. And I was like, well, this fight's over. I hate that I have that DQ loss on my record. I would have rather fought the third round than won with the finish or the decision, just so there's no weird blemish. But in hindsight, it's one of those things. It's kind of a fun story. So let's fast forward to February 2015. I take a fight short notice against Rashid at 185, and I'm 185. We fight again. I triangle choke him. He was actually pretty cool. We're in the back room. And it turns out he had stolen some tickets from the promoter. So the promoter took it out of his fight purse. And I'll tell you, he probably wasn't getting paid much. So he didn't.
We've got to book this guy.
This guy's a psycho.
He sucker punches the promoter in the back.
What?
Back, gets tackled by like 30 dudes. And the promoter's a friend of ours, a training partner of ours, a good dude. And then gets tackled. A cop comes in, and I'll never forget. Rashid's like freaking out fighting. The cop points a taser like at his face, and he's like, stop moving. And Rashid looked at him and he goes, okay. And then they arrested him. And then my brother is a cyber genius. He ended up pulling up Rashid's criminal record. And turns out the dude was going by a different name, fled Chicago where he was wanted for stalking. Crazy.
What?
Yeah, crazy.
Who
crazy
is this
stuff,
guy, and
man.
how do we get him booked for us? Jesus.
Dude, no, man. So thankfully he's been out of the scene. I'll never forget, you know, my mom is funny. You know, I was like, you know, suburban white kid. You know, my mom was like, Allie, where do you run into these guys? And I'm like, Mom, I'm fighting in a cage for money. It's not going to bring the classiest of folks sometimes. And, you know, just, and again, in hindsight, a fun story to tell the kids one day.
That's amazing, because we're looking through your fight card. I didn't assume there'd be any video of Texas City Throwdown 1 from almost 6 years ago. So that's why we wanted your story. I expected an interesting story about getting bit on the wrist during a rear naked choke attempt, not a fleeing felon who attacks a promoter after biting you. This is insane. I'm so glad we got to talk and to hear about that, because that is crazy.
Yeah, it was weird for sure.
And I mean, this kind of gives me a perfect segue into my next question. How is the regional scene in Texas? Hopefully there's a whole lot more of that.
No, man, the regional. So I have a theory. There were a lot of guys who made it to the UFC from Houston. Mick Maynard, UFC matchmaker, ran a promotion in Houston way back in the day. I'm talking like 2008, 2009, called Lone Star Beatdown. And that since formed into Legacy. But the Texas Commission is as ass backwards as you guys could guess. One of the hardest commissions to deal with. They're not fighters. They're not athletes. All the same, for whatever reason, they did not allow Pro-Am cards. And, like, I would go to Louisiana a lot as an amateur to go watch fights. fighting fights, whatever, and they would do pro-am. So they would have 2 pros that they have to fight and like 10 amateur fights. So about that, and then so the promoters wouldn't have to spend an arm and a leg to get these full fight cards. But in Texas, you couldn't do pro-ams. So if you wanted to throw an amateur fight card, let's say you have 12 fights on the card, you need 24 amateur fighters. And if you want to throw a pro fight card, you need 24 professional fighters. So the demand for a big pool of fighters was certainly apparent from like 2006 to maybe 2015 in Houston. So there was a lot of gyms popping up and a lot of active fighters. And honestly, it was a very high-level show. Mick Maynard, legacy promoter at the time, was a pioneer of his craft. The UFC saw something special in him, and he actually got us a TV deal with Access TV. So my 5th fight as a professional, I was fighting on TV already. My 6th fight, I was fighting on TV. It was cool, and Legacy became a very high-level show for a local promotion. Now Fury Fighting Championship has kind of taken over that reputation, that Legacy is now mixed with RFA, and now they're doing things all around the U.S. opposed to just in Texas. Fury's making big moves too, and there's actually a Fury fight card this Saturday. I'm not going to be attending just because I'm going to stay safe for my fight, but I have one of my amateurs who's actually fighting for a belt. So my striking coach, and it's weird, the Texas Commission is allowing only 1 corner. They have to quarantine for 24 hours. But they're having a crowd. It doesn't make any sense, but I mean, whatever. There's going to be some really good fights for Fury. You guys can catch those on an online stream, I'm sure. I'm actually really looking forward to those fights.
Man, well, it seems kind of really counterintuitive to growing a sport in the state. If a lot of people don't understand, 24 sounds like a small number, but to find 24 pro MMA fighters who can all fight on a small card in Dallas, Texas, which is a big city. But if you have guys in Texas, and you can look on rankings on Tapology and stuff, you're not going to find that many dudes. And then we dive into weight classes. All of a sudden, you've got probably lightweights going up fighting closer to 170, middleweights cutting unhealthy to get there. And then you got to think a lot of these cards end up never happening just due to pullouts and stuff. That seems so counterintuitive that you can't do pro-ams, and that makes sense as to why there's not that many fighters coming out of Texas. There is an influx of talent, and the Houston area has put out some killers. But man, coming out of Texas, you'd expect a lot more people. With just the culture of Texas and how we think of them as a state, we'd expect them to be a lot more ahead of the game on this MMA stuff, and it seems like they're really behind.
You know what? I know like Florida is a pretty decent state for MMA, and then California. But I mean, name a couple more. I think Texas is actually number 3, and Houston's done a good job.
Nevada and New Mexico, I've got to put up there, to be honest with you.
Nevada certainly, and New Mexico. That's true. Another 2 good states. But I mean, Texas top 5 for sure, in my opinion. Granted, I'm horribly biased for sure, but I'll tell you. Some of those old school legacy cards in Houston, I'm from Houston. I do travel up to Dallas every time I want to train with the guys at Florida. So pretty much every time I'm in fight camp or anytime the welterweights have fights coming up, I'll make the trek and stay there for a few days and train with those guys. Fight camps have always been awesome. But, I got Tapology up right now. And some of these old legacies, man, they were fun. Derek Lewis made his way, Daniel Pineda, Andrew Craig. There was a lot of guys. It's funny. I say Derek Lewis. So my fifth or sixth fight, Jorge Macaco Patino fought Derek Krantz. Derek Krantz was legacy champ. I took the belt from him. Krantz had a run in the UFC, and then Derek Lewis fought for the belt. Lauren Murphy was on this card. Myself. It's been a cool scene, man. This was before the iPhone was so used by everybody. A lot of it wasn't documented, man. There's some fights that I've had as a pro that I've never seen before. I wish I would have been a little more in the moment and had some documentation of some of these awesome fights and some of these fun memories.
I wish we could have documentation of that first Rashid Abdullah fight. So that's what I would want to see.
Maybe after this fight on the 19th, when I have some free time, I have video of that fight.
Do you?
You know Mike the Truth Jackson?
Yeah.
So he actually.
He's a great social media follow.
Right. Yeah. So I'd have to look for it, but I bet you I could find that fight. Give me some time after my scrap here on the 19th. I could find that fight. The bite is subtle. You'll never see the bite happen because he's like in my closed guard with his head buried into my chest.
Is the mark
There's
visible?
a picture Mike Jackson has on Facebook too of like a big, goofy, like comedic circular bite mark. And like Rashid, he didn't have the nicest set of teeth on him either, man. It was gross. I still think that's gross. It's weird.
We want to get you out of here. We know it's a little bit later for you over there in Texas, but I did want to ask you one more thing before we head out of here. You said recently in an interview that The Matrix had inspired you to get into fighting, and I want to know if there's any more Hollywood cinematography influence that you have for getting into fighting besides just The Matrix, and how do you feel about The Matrix sequels? That's my second part of the question.
You know what? I saw the Matrix sequels in theaters when I was young, and I saw the Matrix when I was like 9 years old or 10 years old. So like I actually never knew what the plot was about until I watched all the movies as an adult, and I'm like, whoa, this is like way deeper than I thought. I enjoyed the movies, especially the second film. They had that freeway fight scene, which was the coolest. And I took the movies for what they were, like a sci-fi action film. I enjoyed the trilogy. The first one, obviously unbeatable. We got Matrix 4 coming out. I didn't see that coming. And then like Keanu Reeves is always the man, but then he released John Wick, and like that made the Matrix stuff
another level
rise. But yeah, the Matrix is cool. Love the trilogy. Honestly, should probably go back and watch the second and third one. I've seen the first one like I don't know how many times, and I've seen the second and third one a couple times. But I'll tell you, Mortal Kombat, maybe even more so than the Matrix, is what got me into fighting. I have two older brothers. And they were always playing the cool, bloody video games, and I was the youngest brother watching. We played a bunch of Mortal Kombat growing up, and I was really into Jet Li and Jackie Chan films, especially Jackie Chan has a film called Who Am I? I don't know if you guys have seen the movie, but it's one of the best Jackie Chan movies you'll ever see in your life. He's got a scene where he fights these two dudes on a rooftop. One is like a savant, lanky kickboxer, and the other guy's like a karate guy. And there's a scene where they throw kicks at each other and their shins clash like 30 times. And when I was young, I never knew that would hurt that bad. But now as like a kickboxer who's like, I broke a guy's arm with a kick one time. I checked some kicks and had kicks checked. That's rough. I love that movie. I should watch that movie here recently.
I think I'm about to watch that movie.
Yeah, Jackie Chan's Who Am I is the name of that film.
Jackie Chan's Who Am I? I mean, I'm a big Jet Li guy too. Fist of Legend, shout out 1994. It's an old school movie, but I like that movie.
I didn't watch a lot of Jet Li's older stuff, but like Jet Li in Kiss of the Dragon, and even his terrible movies with like DMX were great. And he has a movie called The One with Jason Statham. I saw that movie in theaters as well, and that one always like holds such a dear spot in my heart. Drowning Pool had a song called Sinner that was featured in that film, and Papa Roach's Blood Brothers song was in that movie. And like the action was great. The plot I thought was cool. I'm a big Jason Statham fan. I kind of look like him. And so everything about that movie I love. And if you guys have not seen Jet Li's The One, it's a film worth watching. It's kind of short. It's like an hour and a half.
We look forward to Jason Statham one day playing you in a movie. Hopefully he can affect a proper accent.
Hey man, cool.
Man, I think that's all we've got for this, just slightly over a half an hour. I want to thank you for coming on. It's been awesome to talk to you. I think you've earned a fan for life out of me. You just described my childhood in your own. So we're looking forward to seeing you go in against Anthony Pettis. We're looking forward to seeing you try and shock the world on December 19th. And just before we go, go ahead and let the fans know where they can find you, where they can follow you, and sign us off, and we'll see you soon enough.
Cool, yeah, just big shout out to my brothers at Fortis and all my students at Gracie Behind the Woodlands, and then everything on social media is the same. I'm not super active. I don't think I ever will be, but it's all Alex Morano MMA. And one thing, I do want to be a little more active on Reddit. I have my username there, so if something cool is posted about me on Reddit, I'll make sure to answer some of the comments.
As someone who's in that sub a lot, it could use more professional opinions. I'll leave it at that.
And we actually get a lot of viewers coming out of the sub, so you'll have to message me your username. We'll tag you when we get that posted up there.
Cool. It's Alex. It's user / whatever, Alex Morano MMA.
Oh, it really is all the same, isn't it?
That's easy.
All right. Well, I hope we did well by you. You definitely did well by us, and I hope you have a great evening, man. It's been great having you on, and until the next time, we'll see you soon. Go get that W next week.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks, guys. I'm gonna give my life to get that win.